Thanks for tuning in to the Urban Scope podcast. I'm back with more WNBA news. Now, thinking about the landscape of the WNBA right now as it's constructed or where it's heading to, we're looking at a colossal rematch, finals rematch from last year of the Minnesota Lynx and the New York Liberty. Now, both teams currently are undefeated. Both teams right now are on its trajectory to have a rematch because they're head and shoulders above everyone else in the league. And both of these teams are undefeated right now. The Lynx just won again last night, so they're 9-0, and the New York Liberty are 8-0. So, it's looking like that way because the next team I want to say is um, only won like 6 games. Is 6-4 is the next best teams, and there's not a lot of parity this year in teams because there are only 6 teams out of the 11 that are over 500. And I'll talk about the state of the league in a little bit. But this rivalry between the Lynx and the Liberty could potentially be what the Cleveland Cavaliers and the Golden State Warriors were back in the early 2010s, well late 2010s. The New York Liberty is still looking hungry. The Lynx are definitely looking hungry, especially trying to avenge that loss they had from last year. It was a very good series. A lot of nail biters, a lot of in game moments, not a lot of blowouts. It was a lot of competitive nature in those games, and you just felt that the trajectory or where the league is heading is in a good spot, especially standpoint wise. Um, I mean, not standpoint wise, but star power wise, because there were a lot of stars in that game. When you think about Breanna Stewart and Jonquel Jones, and you think about um, Nafisha Collier, even Courtney Williams, she stepped up big time. She had a superior point guard play in that series, and she stepped up huge. But they had a lot of star power between both the teams. Not even, and I forgot to mention Sabrina Ionescu, who was one of I call her the female Steph Curry of the WNBA because of her 3-point ability and the way she can get her shot off and come off screens. It's very similar to what Steph Curry does. But the New York Liberty is looking unbeatable right now. They just beat the Connecticut Suns, like maybe a week ago by 48 points. It was a demolishment in that game. And they only played 10-minute quarters. So to lose by 48, you had to be on a roll at that point. So they did a lot of they had a lot of great basketball they've been doing lately. And it's interesting to see if they can keep that up. And the New York Liberty, up until that point, had 5 of their 7 wins have been by double digits. And they lead in most statistical categories, positive statistical categories, I add, especially offensively. But defensively, as a team, they do a good job defensively. They have a lot of length on their team as well, so they can make it very difficult in the passing lanes by deflecting passes and things like that, and just making it difficult to get shot off. So the Lynx will have their hands full, um, but they have an impressive defense as well, and they have an elite scorer and a defender in Nafisha Collier who can play on both sides of the basketball. So they do have that, but will the pieces around them be enough to finally edge out New York Liberty in the playoffs, or if they eventually meet in the finals? But Nafisha Collier is also leading the league right now in points per game with 26 points per game, which is the league best. And she's been an anchor for that defense as she always has been. But the test for the Minnesota Lynx will be throughout the season when they have to play the New York Liberty 4 times. And they have to play them 4 times in just 2 weeks, in a little over 2 weeks. So it's going to be interesting to see how well they fare with the New York Liberty, because that's become their kryptonite, so to speak, or their arch nemesis that they have to get over that hump of. A lot of players and teams throughout history have to get over certain teams. Jordan, when he was coming up, he had to get over the Detroit Pistons, and that was his one team he had to get over. I mean, of course, there were the Boston Celtics and there were the LA Lakers, but the Lakers would be the finals. So it's more likely the Celtics and the Detroit Pistons he had to get over. LeBron, he had to get over the Celtics and he had to get over the Warriors. So there's always going to be um, some team or some obstacle you have to get over in sports and in any kind of field that you're in. And that's where the Minnesota Lynx are in right now. And especially with the high of New York basketball right now, everybody's in a huge fandom over basketball in New York because they've been down for so long. But them making to the Eastern Conference Final in the WNBA, the Knicks making it that far, and then the Lynx, I mean not the Lynx, the Liberty winning the WNBA Finals last year. The city's on a natural high, and it's going to be a lot to deal with that crowd, especially at the Madison Square Garden. But this is what the sport needed as far as having that parity and having that consistency from a team, so you can create this villain of this team that has to be taken down, and for fans to come out to support and fans to want to see a team fall, because you need that aspect. They had that with the Warriors and with the Cavaliers. They had that with the Celtics and the Lakers back in the day. They had that with multiple different teams, whether it be New York versus LA or Boston versus LA. They had those different rivalries that created this mystique about the league and created this aura of people, people come out to hate and people come out to love. So you have both of that, you have that dichotomy against each other. And I think this is what is needed for the league. And of course, when Caitlin Clark, unfortunately she's been injured. But when she started going to the finals and create these rivalries, it's going to bring up that piece again, because that's what initiated more women's basketball support in the first place, when Angel Reese and Caitlin Clark first had that rivalry and it was going back and forth. But there's not a lot of parity in the league right now because a lot of teams in the WNBA are trying to figure it out. Whether it be the injuries that Caitlin Clark has with the Indiana Fever, Courtney Vandersloot just went down for the Chicago Sky. Paige Beckers has been out a little bit. Jonquel Jones has even been out for the Liberty. So there's a lot of unfortunate parts of the business, but of course the league must go on, and there are a lot of stars to compensate for those losses, so to speak, collectively, of course, because you can't really replace most of these stars individually or another individual. But coming down the line, of course, you got Juju Watkins coming out, and a lot of other stars I'm excited about in the league as well. Olivia Miles, when she finally comes out, I believe next year she'll be eligible. Well, she was eligible last year, but she decided to stay another year. Hannah Hidalgo is coming out. I like her as well. I call her like the female Iverson of the league. But there are a lot of stars coming up. But I think this rivalry between the Liberty and Lynx will definitely be a good thing for the sport of the women's basketball and the WNBA. But as always, until next time, I'll see you next time.